Every single person in this world has a story to share. Your story is your superpower, and it's unique to you. In sharing it with the world, you can impact millions of people. If you keep it to yourself, you are doing the world a disservice. This is Dela. I'm the host of Dela's Voice, and I help you share your superpower with the world.
This episode of Dela's Voice Sunday Live Talk Show has been brought to you by Brenda Reiss, BrendaReissCoaching.com. Hello, and thank you for joining us again for another episode of Dela's Voice Sunday Live Talk Show. Today's sponsor is Brenda Reiss at www.BrendaReissCoaching.com, and I want to thank her for sponsoring the show. Forgiveness, right? That's the topic of today's show. I want to introduce you to my guest today, but before we go there, I want to give you a little bit of a background about Brenda. Brenda Reiss is a forgiveness coach. When I was looking for a speaker for the show, her name was given to me by Steve Weber with American Gumption. And I thought, okay, can't get any more perfect than this. Talking about forgiveness to a forgiveness coach. Brenda has a lot of experience with this. She's helping people every day to allow, to release resentments, to look at the world and other people as a mirror. And this is how we come to peace, by forgiveness. And so she's going to give us a few simple steps today on how we can get there, actually. Brenda Reiss has actually published 2 books, and her books are Forgive Yourself and Journey to Your Heart Space. Both of these books are available on Amazon, and so you can order those and start your own journey of forgiveness. I can't wait to start this conversation. I want to thank you, the viewer, for being here today. If you're watching this, I want you to be aware that it is not by accident. You are meant to be here. And for you to come across this show, there's a reason. And please share this with other people, because the topic of today's show is really, really important. So share with others. Let them also be inspired. Let them learn. And this is how we can help one another. As always, Dela's Voice is a platform where we get informed, inspired, and motivated for wellness, recovery, and change. And I want this to be available to as many people as possible. Please help me welcome my beautiful guest on the show, Brenda Reiss. Good morning.
Oh, good morning.
Well, good morning to you. Good afternoon.
Yeah, it's afternoon for you.
Yes. Welcome on the show, Brenda. Thank you so much for being here today.
Oh, thank you for asking me. I so appreciate it.
You've been coaching forgiveness. Is that, yeah, for a long time?
Yes.
And I want to ask you, why is it so important?
So as I learned, when the forgiveness, we hear about forgiveness, right? So it's like, have you ever heard, you need to forgive, you need to let go, or you aren't able to move forward. Okay. But growing up, it was like hearing that you just need to forgive, you just need to let go. And it's like, let go of what? I've been hurt. I don't know what you mean. And how do we do it? Right? So there's that piece. But the other piece is that forgiveness brings us peace. Forgiveness brings us back to our own heart. And people don't realize that. Because when we use forgiveness, it not only frees other people, but it frees ourselves. And that's really the bottom line for forgiveness. Forgiveness isn't about just resentment and anger either. It's really about creating a present moment and a future that you want to be in. That's free of resentment and anger.
Thank you for that. I think really it's a definition you gave us just now. And I want to ask you, Brenda, to, you have a story. You have a story of why you got into this in the first place. It's, some things happened in your life, just like some things happen in all our lives. And it got you to that turning point where you discovered this and started doing this for a living. But what happened that brought about that awareness for you that forgiveness is so important and you need to forgive? What happened?
So the turning point, the pivot point, I'll back up a little minute before the pivot point. So, like many of us, my growing up, my years have include a lot of different traumas, right? A lot of different abuses, a lot of life happening what I thought to me and not for me. And so trying to navigate and trying to maneuver and survive. And so putting out fires, and going through what I thought I was going through relationships like crazy. So it was interesting. So I joke with my girlfriends that I never dated, I just married. Right. So skip that piece of it because it was just out of which I know now was the codependence and the fear. I know now. But then it was like I was afraid to be alone. I didn't know how to be by myself. And in that, it was interesting because each relationship I got into, it was like the same content, different package. The same things would come up. And I thought, gosh, is there no good men out there? It's like, what's their problem? Right? Their problem. And, and so going through that and in this, I'm picking men that aren't, not specifically, it's not men aren't bad, but in my relationships, right, it was very abusive. And so I finally started to kind of go, okay, I need to figure this out. Well, it was my last marriage, my third marriage and divorce. I'm married now. But it was in my third one that I had my big wake up call. And it was a very painful 10 years where, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, but before we go there and really squeeze all of that from you,
Sure.
I want to make sure we say hi to our viewers who are watching us right now.
Absolutely.
And so if you're watching this show right now, please give us a comment. Otherwise, I won't see you. I would like to say your name as you're watching us. I think that's really important. The people who are here commenting us right now are Frida, Debbie, Deborah. Deborah says, howdy, everyone from Florida. Deborah is with a show, Stroke TV, and they have a fantastic show. Stephen is here, and he says hi. And let's see, Debbie says, I have been hurt deeply by someone very close to me for years. Now we don't speak, and others are angry at me for it. Yeah, I'm sure we're going to talk about this. I just want to read these. Mohammed Arif is here, and he says, peace of mind. Yes, that's exactly what we're talking about. And Stephen says, anger and resentment is too heavy to carry around. Forgiveness allows you to put it down and leave it in the past where it belongs.
You have a very wise audience.
Yes, I do. Yes, I do. Thank you, everyone. Okay, so you were telling us about your 10 years of, you said 10 years of
Mhm.
pain.
Yes.
Yeah. So,
Yes. Yes, because I had given myself, and some people will probably relate to this, but I had given my power away, is what I call it. My dreams were his, my decisions were his. It was interesting because it was just in the relationships that there was the issue. At work, it was different. I could maintain in my sovereignty. I could, I could show up. I could be in my power there. But once I got home, it was like it was gone. I couldn't figure it out. And it just built up to where it got miserable. And I felt empty. I felt like, why am I here? I had been sober, right? Because part of my story is addiction. And I had been sober for about 5 years. And it's like, when I got to that point of, why am I even sober when I'm so emotionally miserable? And thinking it was his fault. And in this was it was infidelity, it was abuse. And so it was like I was feeling beaten down. And finally, all of a sudden, it was just an interesting time where I started to get little messages like we do in life, right? We get little messages, and somebody gives you a book, or they give you, or say, come, look at this class. I had a girlfriend reach out and say, Brenda, this isn't normal. And, why don't you come with me to this program? And it was a 12-step program. I was already in a 12-step program for alcohol, which I am so grateful for. And I learned that, oh, okay, there is another part of me. There's a love addiction part of me, which is codependence on steroids, to where you give yourself away. And it's trying to figure out why. That changed the trajectory of my life, in the sense of it started to wake up. I started to be surrounded in a community, which is so important, being held and knowing, okay, I'm not crazy. There is a way that I can work with this. So that's how it started. And I was able to go, wait a second, there is a pattern here. And the common denominator is me.
Yes.
Not them.
Yes.
Per se. Not that what they did was right,
Mm-hmm.
but there's a common denominator. So what is that? So I got enough strength and courage to be able to confront the relationship and him, and say, and at least he was wise enough to go, Brenda, I can't be in this. I'm not going to do the work.
Yes.
My heart was broken. I was devastated. And it was like, because I'm still in that, still learning, who am I without anybody? How can I stand by myself? What? And so it was really a really empowering moment. So that's also when I learned that the universe is with me and started to guide me more than I was aware of before. Powerful time for me, because I moved from this beautiful home, gave that up into this little apartment that had mold in the corners, and just, because that's what I could afford. And then it was just, I was just dying. You know how you have those cries, those ugly cries, right? The bathroom floor or the kitchen floor. Yes. And it was one of those. And I was just crying out. And I was saying, God, I don't even want to be alive if it's going to be like this. It's like, what is going on? And I was sobbing, and it was in that moment that I just felt this warmth come over me. I mean, it was just this amazing warmth, and I felt like I was being held. Yes, I know. And it gives me chills even today. And it was like, and all I heard was, I've got you. And it was at that moment, I mean, it chokes me up, because it was at that moment that for the first time in my life, I felt like I was going to be okay. Yeah, it was a powerful moment. And it was after that I started getting these little signs that towards forgiveness, because I was trying to forgive. And so the way I knew how, right? So my ex It was funny. So we have, we get triggered. I call them triggers. So we're going forward and I'm trying really hard. I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing, like forgiving, giving him the benefit of the doubt, knowing that he's got a story too. And I'm trying really hard, but I'm still hurt inside, right? I'm still like devastated because now I'm alone. What do I do? Having to figure things out. It was just a crazy time and feeling so lonely, right? And trying to go, am I damaged goods? Will somebody ever want me? And then not realizing just yet that I needed to want myself.
Oh, that's huge.
Yeah. And it was big because then I'm starting to learn because I kept getting triggered. So my ex is a Metro bus driver. Okay, the Seattle area has a lot of Metro buses, 362 or something like that at the time. Every time I saw a Metro bus, I would cry. Every time I saw someone who looked like them, I would cry. Have you? I mean, I'm sure people can relate to this. And it was, or you hear the song, or you hear things, and I was like, blah. I thought I was doing so good.
Yeah.
And it was then that this little droplets, that these little puzzle pieces started falling, and it's like, Brenda, love you. But how do I do that?
That's that. Yes, exactly.
Yeah, I didn't know.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know. And so that's when the forgiveness found me. Is
How?
what I say.
How did that happen?
So in
Can we just say hi to 3 more people?
Absolutely, please.
And if you're watching this show, I want to thank you, and please give us a comment. And Melody's here, and she says hello from Melody in Tampa. And then Joanne is here, and she says, "What a treat to see you again, Brenda."
Oh, thank you.
Okay. So go ahead. Yeah.
Yes. So, so the way the forgiveness work found me was, so what I decided to do, I'm going to back up because what us women do is when I was discovering I was the common denominator in these patterns, in these relationships, I became determined. And that helped me so much. I became determined to be different, to make it different, because I did not want to be alone for the rest of my life. And there's a part of me that knew I didn't have to be, but I sure didn't want that same kind of relationship. So the only thing I have control over is me. So let me heal. And so I started on this beautiful, what I'm calling intentional journey of healing. And it took me to different modalities and different places. And in this was a beautiful person who said to me, have you gone to Mount Shasta? You need to go to Mount Shasta. And it's like, Mount Shasta, what?
What's in Mount Shasta?
I know. And it's like, it's in Northern California. It's like, you need to go to Mount Shasta. It was just this beautiful woman who was getting this intuitive hit. And she's like, okay. So interestingly enough, I'd never heard of Mount Shasta, really. I'd never been. And so I had contacted the Chamber of Commerce and got that little pamphlet, that tells you, what do you do in Mount Shasta? And in the back of that pamphlet was a little advertisement with this little teeny picture of this woman. And I looked at the picture. Have you ever had this where you look at somebody, you go, I want to know more about this person, or I don't know, there's something about this person. So I saw that. And then to the left of it, I saw forgiveness coaching.
Oh.
I know. And I just went, because I was trying I didn't know how to do forgiveness different. I didn't know I needed more forgiveness. Right. And so it was like, I need to know this. So I contacted her. It just worked out beautiful. It's just divinely, what I call divinely timed, because it was like, we were going to Mount Shasta, but only for a few days. And she's like booked up, and she goes, I'm sorry, I'm booked. We won't be able to meet, but I can give you information about this. And then she calls me right back and says, hey, I just had an opening for this one day that I was going to be there at the perfect time. I know. And it was in this session with her that she helped me find the pattern, that the root of the pattern that I had been trying to work on all of my life. And at that time I was, like turned 50, right? It's like this pattern all of my life. And it was amazing, because when we can figure out that root, right, of the pattern, then we can change. It's like part of the process, part of the steps is creating awareness. And when we create awareness, that's when we can make the change.
And only then.
Well, because I can't change something I don't know is there. And it can be it can be a heck of a trip, right? Trying to figure out the awareness and becoming aware. And it can be a painful process sometimes, but it is so worth it. Because what she helped me figure out, this pattern in my life with men, in my relationships, and then it turned out to be not just men. It started showing up in my friendships with women. But what she did was so funny. She says, "Tell me about yourself." And so it's like, how many times you've been married, how long you've been in jobs. It was interesting where she went with this. And this is what got me into the coaching. Was where I said, well, at that time I had been married and divorced 3 times. I said the first marriage was 5 years, the second marriage was a little over 5, the third marriage was 10 years. My first job was 10 years, my second job was 20 years that I was in. She goes, "What happened to you when you were 5 years old? You have a pattern of 5." I know.
Wow.
I know. And I'm like, well, my dad left. My dad left the family. Well, I thought he left me, right? And he left our family for another family who had a daughter just like me. We were friends, same age, looked like each other. And I said, and then when we went to visit, I said, this one time when we went to visit, my memory is when we went to visit, he asked my brother and sister, he said he wanted them to come live with him. But my sister said, "What about Brenda?" And he said, "I don't want Brenda." And I heard that. And I'm looking at her, who's the same age as me, and I'm saying, why does he love you and not me? Not realizing that a pattern is set into motion at that time of every man that I love is going to choose another woman over me. So a pattern of betrayal was set up. Because when I did a timeline, which I highly suggest doing to find our patterns, it's another exercise for awareness, is to do a relationship timeline and look at the commonalities of our relationships. What are the characteristics of each person? Not just romantic relationships, but also friendships. Do people dismiss you? Are you invisible? Do they choose someone over you? Do you try to get together and they always want somebody else to come along? What happened was I realized that in every single one of those, there was betrayal. Somebody was always choosing. I mean, it was such a huge visual pattern for me. It was like, oh my gosh, when she did that, and then we continued to do the work on it, it shifted everything. It helped me come back to me, because see, I'm not broken. There's a pattern. Then it's like, okay, what can I learn from this pattern? That's the ticket.
Hmm.
So this process I'm talking about is radical forgiveness.
Wow. So how did you break out of that pattern?
Yes. So in the radical forgiveness process, the first part is awareness, right? So you become awareness. And it's in this, there's twofold, because what I do is I bring in the radical forgiveness into my work, because I've done other forgiveness training and processes. So I have my own now. But in the radical forgiveness process, it helped me to be clear of that pattern. So the cool thing is like we talked about the mirror, right? You mentioned the
Yes, seeing people
mirror.
as a mirror.
And that was a pivotal time in my forgiveness process.
Mm.
Yeah. Because all of my relationships are a mirror. Relationships, when I started learning about them, relationships are to help us learn and grow. And we can learn, we don't have to stay in those relationships, right? Because it can be, like we hear that saying, relationships or friendships, there's a reason, a season, or a lifetime. And so not always are we with somebody. We can learn something from somebody in a minute, and they're gone. That stays with us forever. And so for me, it was being able to go through this, because the radical forgiveness is a 5-step process. Now, this worked beautifully because I was afraid to be in my heart.
What do you mean?
So, what I had done was, because of the trauma, because of the abuse, the sexual abuse, the mental and physical abuse of growing up and the different things, that's lots of stories in there, as we all have. I had learned to think logically, right? It's safer for me to be in my head, so thinking about things, processing them, for me to allow people in. And it was like I could cry at sad things. I could love my children. I could love people in my family. But there was always a point where I wouldn't let you in past a certain point. Well, what I realized, it's like having a boulder. It's like having a boulder between me and someone else, or a wall, right? We hear about a wall.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't realize I had that. And when I started to do the work, I was realizing that what I call a little trap door. Well, I had a little trap door in my heart. Like, I could show this much to the world, but there's this little piece down here that was really me. Because what I had learned to do was, I had learned to be a chameleon. I had learned that I needed to be what I thought you wanted me to be, so that I would be safe, so you would love me, not realizing how much it was tearing me down inside, because I wasn't able to be authentically me.
That's huge for a lot of people, Brenda. I mean, that I certainly relate to this. Being a chameleon because you want people to love you.
Mm-hmm.
It's a big part of a lot of people's lives, this people pleasing thing, and then you start resenting other people right for it, because it's hard.
It is hard. And that was part of my awareness, my awakening in this, was realizing that it was other people's fault. Well, I started to wake up as I was doing the work, and we'll talk more about that. But as I started to do this work, this mirror, the relationship, I was realizing that, when I hold resentment and anger, when I'm doing this, I'm giving away my power. I'm giving away everything about me. So I'm diminishing inside. It wasn't adding to me. It was taking from me. And I'm the only one that can change that. It was like realizing they're not doing this to me. I'm participating.
Mm-hmm.
Because that moves into this responsibility piece, which there's a 3-step framework that I use, and it's awareness, responsibility, choice. And that moves into responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
I needed to take responsibility for my choices, my actions, my behaviors, my decisions.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's an owie.
And that's huge, right? Just that the mere realization that by you feeling resentment, you are giving your power away. That's huge.
Yeah.
Can we look at some comments?
Yes.
Okay, let's see. Deborah says, I want to make sure I don't miss anything here. They read this. Stephen says most of the anger I used to carry wasn't even mine to carry. It was my mother and father's. My life changed the moment I realized that. We'll come back to that. Mohammed says, forgiving actually is forgiving oneself, not the one we are angry at.
Yes.
Also, there's another comment here from Stephen. My moment came sitting on a bridge, watching the river flow under me. Something told me, put it down. I call it my God moment, he says.
Yes.
That's cool. Mohammed says, how does forgiveness coach help someone going through a problem? And that's a question to you. And Stephen says, Brenda and I share a similar story. Hey, Rosemary's here. Hi, Rosemary. Lawrence is here, and he says, "Don't worry. The most important person in your life understands and will always be on your side." Is that to Debbie? I think that's to Debbie. And then he says, "I love you and don't blame you. Sometimes things like this happen, and it's not a fault of you. Love you and always and forever." Well, this is really cool. I think this comment is meant for Deborah. This is really cool. Wow, we're being a part of this. This is awesome. Okay, all right. So there was a question in there. How does forgiveness coach help someone going through a problem? So I'm sure you'll weave that in. Okay, so let's go. Let's continue, Brenda.
Yeah. No, this is great. I love this. And I love the awareness because it is forgiveness is for ourselves, and in learning that was powerful for me because that's part of that taking the responsibility. So even if, like earlier, we talked about other people being angry at us for our choice, right? I think it was, you said Deborah had
She had
that she doesn't speak.
Angry at someone, right? Or no,
Yeah.
not.
And others are angry
Yeah,
at her
yes.
for it not speaking.
Yeah.
There is a really high percentage of people that this happens to. There's a resentment or anger, or something happens, and they get separated out of this anger and resentment. And a lot of them take it to their grave because of pride. Because I want to be right. I'm right, you're wrong. That's that duality, that's that division. And it doesn't serve us at all. Because when we are hurt by something, that's a beautiful awareness that that's somewhere we need to do some work. Because as an adult, especially, right, if I'm wounded or hurt by a comment, my first thing I can ask is, how old am I? Because as an adult, I know that people really can't hurt me, really, unless they, what we call, push our button. What do you think that button is? That button is a wound. And when we are aware of our wounds, sometimes people press our button so that we can be aware of. It's not necessarily an attack. It can be used as a mirror. So it doesn't mean we have to reconcile with a person, doesn't mean we have to hang out with a person, doesn't mean we even have to talk to that person anymore. The important piece of this is to be able to recognize that I have a wound that's been triggered. I get to go inside and do some healing work.
Or do I want to let it just be forever and ever and ever?
Yes. And there's stories of family members, right, not talking for 20 years and 30 years. And it's really funny because I had a client, she hadn't talked to her sister in 25 years. And we started to, I said, "Well, why is that?" She goes, "I can't remember. I don't even know why." And that is so common. It gets so long. People don't even understand. Now, some people remember the exact moment and what they were wearing and what time it was.
Yeah.
Because of a comment. But a lot of times, this is what happens. Things are said, but it's how we interpret them. It's our perception of that comment or that situation based on our wound.
Mm-hmm.
See, it all comes back down to that responsibility piece. The more I can be aware of my triggers, my wounds, the things that get me, then the more I can bring my power back to me, work on that instead of continuing to be mad at somebody else. Because what I realized was, as long as I stayed mad at my ex, and there were some hurtful things done, right? I mean, there were some things done that I felt hurt about and didn't really realize it was my time to look at that yet. But the more that I stayed connected to him in that way, the more I couldn't move forward in anything. Because how many of us, when we're angry at somebody else, we go to a party or we go to a situation or a gathering and we're so still thinking about this over here, we can't even be present with the people that we're with.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's a really huge awareness piece for ourselves to go, okay, do I want to continue to do that? It's a choice. That brings us to the third part. It's a choice that we get to make, because there is a time to forgive and not a time to forgive.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because if we jump too quickly to forgiveness, then that can be a bypass and it won't last.
So before we go deeper into this, the choice,
Yeah.
I want to take a quick break, and we're going to be right back. This episode of Dela's Voice Sunday Live Talk Show has been brought to you by Brenda Reiss, BrendaReissCoaching.com. And we're back with Brenda Reiss, forgiveness coach, on steps to radical forgiveness.
Yes.
Wow. Okay, so there's a few comments here, and I want to read them to you. But I do have a question of my own also, Brenda. So let's see here. Debbie says, I am not able to forgive. And that's awfully honest. It's awesome, I think, to know that about yourself. Because a lot of times we pretend, and and that's not good. Debbie says they will never see what they have done, so I had to walk away. But I'm losing time with many loved ones because of it. Yes. So let me see if there's anything else. It's so hard because it's family, she said.
Yes.
And I wanted to ask you, this is what I wanted to ask you is, how do we know we haven't forgiven?
Well, we feel like she feels, right? When I haven't forgiven, I feel heavy. I feel disconnected. I feel sad. I feel like I'm stuck in life. I feel like relationships aren't gelling or flowing. A lot of times it'll show up in our work. We constantly feel like we're climbing uphill. How come I can't get a break? And the interesting thing, we'll notice it in our money flow sometimes. We'll notice it in our relationships, because how we do anything is how we do everything. When I'm holding a resentment, if I'm giving away my power to somebody and I'm miserable, I'm dying inside, because that's what it feels like. I cannot show up in the world. I can't even show up for me. So that's how we know we're not forgiving, is when it feels heavy, a burden, and I feel like I'm depressed, I'm anxious. Depression has a lot to do with depressed emotion. And that's what I figured out what was happening for me. I hadn't allowed myself feelings, right? The real true feelings. And what was inside was anger, like a lot of us have. That's why I drank a lot, was to cover up my anger, to try to not feel, to numb out, whether that's alcohol or drugs or shopping or gambling or sex or whatever it is that people choose. There's a reason we're doing it. We're not doing it just because we like it. And a lot of it has to do with the trauma, right? That's buried inside, whatever that is. It doesn't have to be. I've dealt with or I've talked with people who have, major stories of major abuse. And I've talked with several that are going, Brenda, I don't have that story. I don't have that abuse, but my parents weren't there for me. They always bought me things. They never did things for me. There was no emotional connection. So therefore they never learned to have an emotional connection. So it shows up in usually our emotional body, right? On how we learn to hold ourselves back, which that causes a depression. And then it can change the chemicals in our body, in our brain. Our thoughts and our emotions are powerful.
They are.
They are. And so that's a really good indicator. If I am holding myself back, if I'm not looking somebody in the eye, that means that there's a piece of unforgiveness somewhere. And when it comes to family, this is a hard one because we think that family, blood is thicker than water, and that family's going to be with us no matter what. But they have a big job in our lives. So in the radical forgiveness world, I'm going to get radical for a second, if I may.
Yes, please.
In the radical forgiveness world, what I liked about it was it gave me a logical 5 steps. Well, within those logical 5 steps was also the emotional connection. It helped me move from my brain to my heart, is what I talk about, my head to my heart. It gave my head something to do so that my heart could heal. It moved me into the space of getting into the body and understanding what went on, because it shifted my perception, which changed my energy around the story. And another thing to really talk about is the fact of not every relationship is meant for us to reconcile with, even family.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Because if somebody is being abusive to you, family or not, should you be there?
Mm-hmm.
That's a choice we get to make.
Mm-hmm.
But we think that we have to because they're quote unquote family.
Yes.
In the radical forgiveness world and in my training, it was so amazing to realize that we all have a role for each other if we choose to believe this. So that if we choose, one of the assumptions of radical forgiveness is that we are spiritual beings having a human experience. If we choose to believe that, that means that we all have a role. We all agree on a spiritual level to help each other learn and grow. Well, to learn and grow into more love, into more of who I am, I have to know the opposite of it. I'm not able, it's like a fish doesn't know they need water unless they're out of water. It's like, I don't need more closets unless I live in a house without closets. We don't know what we need until we get that opposite of it. So it's really valuable it's a big leap for a lot of people. But when I started to understand that concept, that if I'm a spiritual being having a human experience, you and I, on a spiritual level, agreed to have this conversation today at some point in time. That the people in my life, especially my family, agreed to play some pretty big roles for me. Painful ones as a human being. Because as a spiritual being, we're not able to have emotion necessarily, possibly. So why else am I in this human body then, if I'm not here to learn and to come back home to me? Because I learned a lot. I went through a lot of trauma and abuse, and the gift from that was more compassion, was being able to hold the space for my clients when they are in pain and they're hurting, to be able to find their way back home to themselves. Because in the radical forgiveness world and in all forgiveness is self-forgiveness. It starts with me. But I can't get there at first because I got an itty bitty little, what committee in my head that tells me that I'm wrong and I'm not valuable and I'm, no one will love me and look at all the mistakes you've made. I've got that going on. But in my heart, I have that purity of spirit that tells me I'm lovable no matter what, that just being me is enough. So how do you rectify both of those? You start outside of yourself with these relationships, and we look at the mirror of those. And I say, like my ex, the exercise that I did was that I wrote down all the things that I didn't like about him. He's mean, he's nasty, he's narcissistic, but mainly he doesn't show love. He would say some mean things to me. He would abuse me, right? And I felt lonely. That he wouldn't connect with me. I wrote these things down. Then on the opposite side, this is the mirror, and this is what is hard for a lot of people. I looked at Where am I doing that to myself?
Wow.
That's the mirror. Where am I being abusive to me? Where am I saying mean things to me? Where am I separating myself from life? Where am I, and this was the big one, where am I betraying myself because I had a huge pattern of betrayal?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Wow. That's huge.
Yeah.
We got Matty's here, and he says, "I'm 30 years old. I had a stepfather. My life totally My life is totally dominated by the memories of those years. I think I have lost many good times that I could have." And we do that, don't we? Like we spend so much time in resentment that we lose the joy of what life could be.
Well, we do because we're in that story of the pain, of the wound, and we're not taught to get out of that. How do I get out of that? Right? It's like, how do I separate it? And that's where we get to make a choice. We get to decide, is it time to forgive? So this is what I say, am I sick and tired of myself? Am I sick and tired of hearing the same story? Am I sick and tired of holding myself back and not being in a healthy relationship? Because we get to decide, is it time? Now, for instance, if somebody just went through a breakup, that, from a relationship, it's not time to forgive if it's new, because you have to feel the feelings. You've got to allow yourself to get all of that out. Because what we go through, the grieving and the betrayal, if there's betrayal involved, but the grieving process, when we grieve one thing, we're grieving a lot of things. We're not just grieving that relationship. We're grieving these other times. I call them dust bunnies, right? We've got these dust bunnies from other times and relationships and losses, especially what we've just gone through. So we've got that. So at the grieving and having somebody to show you and help you through that, hold you in this beautiful time of grieving, getting it out. And then after a while, determining, okay, is it time to forgive? When there's been a hurt, like from family, deciding, okay, my stomach gets in a knot every time I go over there or think about going over there. I feel like this. I feel diminished. I feel like I know I'm going to be attacked, and I'm so tired of that. So we can determine, am I tired of it enough to do something about it? Or am I still attached to my story and it's not time yet? We know when we get to that point of, I am tired of this, like I did with it. It's like, I'm so tired of these relationships. I want a really healthy relationship. How do I do that? And when I ask that question, universe, show me, how do I do that?
Mm-hmm.
That's when things started coming and falling into place. So it's really cool to be able to see like that, where there's a stepfather involved and you have a story around that. Because a lot of times it's abuse. It doesn't mean that something wrong didn't happen. It doesn't mean that at all. But what the meaning from that is, what have I learned from that? And what am I ready to let go around that? Because a lot of us, we're still those kids where the abuse happened. There's aspects of ourselves that are still locked into that space. And there's a lot of different modalities that can help us through that. In the forgiveness world, it is around looking at our story, having our story witnessed and validated, because what happened, happened. Having it validated, allowing our feelings around it, because if we don't allow it, we can't heal what we don't feel. We can't. The more we stuff it, the more it'll show up as a dis-ease in our body. And then we get to look at the story differently, like the mirror exercise. Wait, maybe I can start to look at it differently. Maybe I can look at it as happened for me because I'm a different person than I am today. What are those things that happened that are actually values and qualities in my life today versus the pain?
Yeah.
And then In the radical forgiveness training and process, it was like, how can I reframe it to look at it that maybe this happened for me and not to me? Maybe we were playing a role for each other. Yes, it's a big leap, and I'm not saying that it's an easy one, but that in this process is how I got to feel peace around my father and my mother, because there was a lot of abuse from my mom. And she had her story, right? She had her own stuff, trying to raise kids single and going through her stuff. But it was also so valuable to get the healing around my father. When I looked at the fact of the reframe on that was maybe he didn't want to be a dad. He didn't know how to be one himself. And so therefore he was more abusive. He was also dismissive and invisible. I was invisible to him because he was invisible to himself. Yeah.
I love that, Brenda. I love that. The mirror is really, really powerful.
It is.
Looking, so here's a list of all the things that I am, that this person did to me, or that happened to me. And then looking at it and saying, okay, well, which one of these am I doing to myself? That is so powerful. And then we can start right there, because that is the lesson. You're saying that is the lesson of that relationship. That's huge. I don't know about our viewers, but this is huge for me. I think just hearing that is going to make a lot of difference for me.
Okay.
So there's other comments here. Mohammed says hypertension and sugar are the outcome of what's going on in our minds. Meaning like diabetes and
yeah, it definitely is. Yeah, we can cause that. I mean, the disruption of our hormones and what the emotion, because our bodies keep score, right? There's a book out there, Our Bodies Keep Score, and it really describes how it does that super well, and it can cause that. It can cause that.
Colleen says, putting personal health and safety first is necessary for self-love.
It is.
Stephen says, let's see. I think I must have missed another comment before this, but something about he's involved now, but my brother's memory of our childhood is harsher than mine.
And that happens a lot in families. We all have different memories.
Yes. We could have, it's true. We could have the same thing happen to two people, and they both remember it totally differently. And isn't that interesting, Brenda? Like, what does that tell you? What does that tell you?
Well, see, this is where, when I started talking to my sister about this, she had a total different experience, and she's on the call today. She had a total different experience.
Who's your sister?
Melody.
Melody.
Yeah. And so we have a different experience of our mom and our dad. Like, we have the same parents, but a whole different childhood almost. But what that shows me, and this is where it fell into place with radical forgiveness technology and process, was we have different lessons to learn. So we have different wounds we need to heal. We come in, this is where it started going, well, maybe this is true then. Maybe because her take on it and her wound and her healing is different than mine. How could that be? We both went through the same stuff. So it's like, oh, so that's where it started showing me that we come into this lifetime with a different agenda for each of us. And that's how we get to honor each other, because we all have a wound and a story. So when we can honor each other and accept that about each other, that can bring more love and peace into our hearts and into our relationships. And this also includes letting people go. This also includes that maybe it's time, that not everybody is going to agree with this concept. Not everybody is going to agree with the way I feel about something or we feel about something. There's not everybody that's going to agree that there was abuse that happened because of their own wound, their own filter, and their own denial. That's huge. A lot of people are in denial about looking at themselves. And when we start changing and we start bringing up truth for us, they are not able to see it. And learning to be in awareness and acceptance of that is one of the biggest lessons we are all learning. Be in acceptance of somebody else's journey, their experience, separate from mine, will bring me peace. It's not comfortable. And remember, acceptance is not agreement, but it sure can help us to take responsibility for ourselves because we're the only ones we can have any control over.
Yes. This topic is huge, Brenda, and I think, to be honest, I don't know any one single person who hasn't had to forgive.
Yes.
I think we all have had to forgive at some point, and a lot of us don't know how. So when someone's in that situation, they can start working with someone like you, a forgiveness coach. And so you, what do you do for the people? So first of all, what's the process?
So the process first is taking a look at the story. What's going on? Because that's the first step, is like what's happening currently in your life. Take a look at that. And then because in that story that's where I get to pick out the patterns. I get to pick out the beliefs, because what I will get usually from this story is I'll get these little, like the train, like that coach found for me, the pattern of 5. So I pick up, because that's what I'm trained to do, is pick up these different patterns, plus my own experience, my own life experience brings me to a super awareness around those. But it's doing that. And then it's taking a look at how can you support yourself right now in your life? Where are you not safe? Let's get you safe. Okay. Where do you need to start a more inner process, an inner practice for yourself to fortify your inner core, to bring you in alignment so that you are not so much giving power away, that you start to feel who you are inside you. Then we take a look at who are the players in your life, who are the players that this is happening. And then we start tearing that apart and looking at it. The beauty of the forgiveness work is that we're not going to deal so much with the past. We have to look at the past as a compass of which direction it has taken you, and then create some new directions of where you want to go. Because forgiveness is not just about the past. Like I said, it's about creating a future that you want to live in. How can I live here? How can I learn this acceptance? How can I learn where I'm projecting my stuff onto other people too? That's a whole nother topic. And then where's the mirror so that I can come back home to me and somehow learn how to let other people go or reconcile with. What do I need to do? So this is the process. So it's not just like a simple process, but there are steps. And there's, like, through the radical forgiveness work, there's an actual book by Colin Tipping called Radical Forgiveness. And I trained with him personally. And there is that. They can start with that too, to bring awareness to what that is. And then we look at where can we take responsibility and where can we have choice, but you're held in a container. So the working with a coach is different, because a coach helps to just do the tough love. Where am I in denial? Where am I not moving forward? Right? And being able to bring those out in a loving way. But also with me, the clients love the fact that they can be real with me in a safe place. And they feel held in this container, because doing the forgiveness work is very intimate.
Yes.
And it can be very scary, because the thing is, most people don't want to let go of their stories because they don't know who they are on the other side of them. Because in our head, it's made up this big thing. It's kind of like not feeling our emotions and feelings. Dela, because we are scared because they were developed when we were younger and they seemed bigger than us at the time, so we stuffed them. Now there's a little part of us remembering those, but they're not. A lot of them. Now, some of them have been big, and in that case, when there's been some really major trauma, then I suggest working with a therapist along with a forgiveness coach. Yet a lot of our traumas are bigger than what we think that they are. In the fact, when you look at it through the lens of the child that was abused compared to the adult you are now, if that makes sense.
Yes, totally makes sense. So first of all, let me read this. Deborah says, Brenda, we would love to have you on Stroke TV to speak to our community of survivors who all need to find forgiveness, mainly for themselves after stroke.
Oh, yes. Thank you.
I will connect the two of you. And Mohammed says, should there be any mantras to keep oneself cool and calm?
Absolutely. You know, the wonderful thing about mantras is you need to find something that feels true to you. So feeling true to you. What I like to do is I am present in this moment with my breath. What that does, breathing is the number one tool that we do not use that we have access to all the time. So Mohammed, when you're wanting to be cool and calm, what I do is pause. This is what I share with my clients. So when you start to feel it, because we start to feel a flush or we start to feel the tension, stop. And I tell myself, stop in my head, stop, breathe. 1, 2, 3, in, hold, and out. 1, 2, 3. And what I do is I say, I am present in this moment with my breath. And I just do that a couple times and it calms down my nervous system. And so it's finding those little things like that. There's not just one mantra, because I don't usually, suggest just one mantra for people. It's finding that I am present in this moment with my breath. I am whole and complete as I am. Some people, I am enough is really important. Some people, lately, I can do hard things. But the biggest one is that I know who I am, and I am loving and kind. Especially when we have things coming at us where people are telling us we're not. But the breath work and being present in the moment is what I go to all the time. So I hope that's helpful.
Perfect. One thing I want to say is, you hear from some people and they'll say, I'll never be able to forgive them. I will never forgive them. And so I think that's maybe stop saying that.
Yes.
Right? Because we're only hurting ourselves. And that's huge. I don't think, I think when we're stuck in that anger and resentment, we don't realize how we're hurting ourselves emotionally and physically as a result. So just like, don't say that. Don't say, I will never forget. Don't say that. I think that.
Well, they can switch it to, I am willing to look at forgiving them. Okay. If we're going from, I can't forgive, we're not going to jump to, okay, yeah, I can forgive. Right? I mean, we're not. I had to start with my ex, especially, and even with my mom. I am willing to forgive. I am willing to entertain the idea of forgiveness, right? What we do is that takes down the barrier in our brain. It's really important. Our brains, whatever we are repeating becomes a pattern. So it'll harden our heart. And if we don't want to harden our heart, we need to take a look at what we're saying to ourselves.
Yeah.
Because resentment and anger is like that boulder between you and me, between life, and how we do anything is how we do everything. So it's not just in this one place with this one person. This boulder is there between everything else. So being just willing, just soften it a little bit and go, okay, this is scary, but I'm going to be willing to entertain the thought or idea of forgiveness around this person
Yes.
or situation.
Yes. Yes.
Because sometimes people choose not to forgive, but it is a choice.
Mm-hmm.
It's looking at why. What is it that you are getting from holding on to the story of victim? What is it that you are getting? Because there's a cost for everything. There's a cost and a benefit. I'm not going to hold on to my story of my ex unless it's benefiting me. Because as human beings, we don't do anything without a benefit.
Sure.
Right? So
Yes.
what are you benefiting from? So I would ask anybody on this call or listening, if you are saying I can't forgive, or if forgiving always seems like I'm giving away way too much, is like stop and say, what am I getting from this? What's the benefit? And what is the cost? So if my benefit is of being victim, right? So that, but what you're saying is if I held on to my story of my ex, what I'm doing is I'm not willing to get hurt again. I'm afraid to get into another relationship where I have to show who I am and you won't love me. I'm afraid to be who I am. That is the truth of it. So that's the benefit, is it keeps me safe from having to get hurt. But what is that costing me? It's costing me the joy that comes with loving and opening up. It's time spent with loved ones, right? It also, the cost of it is interrupting how I'm showing up in the world because I'm always guarded and held back and not trusting of anybody.
Mm-hmm.
So it's costing me time, money, my sanity.
Yes.
So take a look at that. What are you benefiting? What's the benefits and what's the cost?
Oh, amazing. There are so many comments. I do want to apologize because we are out of time, so I won't be able to read all the comments. But this has been a fantastic show. Brenda, you have brought so much value to me, to the audience, to the world. Thank you so much for being here today.
And I want to thank your audience too, because they have been amazing. And I love their authenticity and their transparency.
Mm-hmm.
And oh my gosh, and just what they're saying, I would love to hear their stories.
It's awesome. What they're, these comments are what keeps this show so
Yes.
interactive, right? And to know that everybody's benefiting from this talk is just amazing. So I do want to read this comment that Joanne sent. I worked with Brenda years ago, and hearing her now, I am realizing how very far I've come. Thank you for this program.
Yeah, thank you, Joanne.
So I want to give you a couple of more minutes to leave us with whatever you like, Brenda.
Oh, we've covered so much.
Yes, we have.
But I guess what the whole thing for me is liberating our heart. And that's what I talk about, because liberating our heart for me means bringing in the freedom of choice, the freedom that, because when I was younger, I wasn't able to really, I was hurt and I was wounded and things were happening to me. And what I've realized now is, wait a second, I have a choice. I have a choice to be able to look at those stories now. And are they serving me? Are they benefiting me? Or are they costing me? So when you look at any kind of resentment or grudge, take a look at it through that lens. What is it benefiting? And what is the cost? Because really, what is it that you truly desire? What is your heart's desire of how you want to feel in this life? Not think. How do you want to feel in this life? And if it's anything around peace, then let's look at the forgiveness. Start to be willing to entertain the idea that maybe life is happening for me, not to me, and that I have a choice in how I move forward. Because it is about being present and moving forward that we're here. Because remember, the past is just a thing that we can use. It's a compass, but it's a thing that we can use that can tell us what we're here to do today. Because you are a culmination of what your hurts and pains were. You're a culmination of that today. And you can help so many people with it. like you're doing, Dela, with your voice.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Brenda. Again, everybody can reach you at www.brendareisscoaching.com. That's your website. And so I want to thank you again for being here today, and for first of all, for doing what you do in the world, for showing up the way you're showing up for the world, but also giving us your time like this so generously, and sharing with us your knowledge and wisdom, and sharing with us your story. I really, really am blessed. I appreciate you from the very bottom of my heart. Thank you again for being here.
Thank you so much for inviting me. And thank you for sharing what you share, what you're bringing to the world. It is just amazing. And I'm so grateful.
Thank you. For the audience, I want to thank every single one of you for all the comments. I so appreciate you. Without you, there will be no Dela's voice. So thank you for showing up. And I'm so sorry if I didn't get a chance to read all the comments, although they're fabulous, and they will be staying on under this post on Facebook. So Brenda, if you have time and you want to just go through them, and that would be amazing. So again, thank you for being here, and just want to leave you with this thought that your life, as Brenda said, I mean, we're here for a reason. We're all here for a reason. We're here to learn and grow. One of the biggest things I've learned in my life has been the serenity prayer, Brenda, as I know you've probably heard it too. Right? It tells so much, and
it's a lifesaver for me. It's been a lifesaver for me.
Yeah. So do you have it memorized, Brenda? Would you give the honor? Thank you. Would you do the honor, please?
Yes. And so for those that like God, use God or say universe or whatever, just God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Well, this has been another Dela's Voice, sparking your soul. Until next time, stay blessed. Bye-bye. This episode of Dela's Voice Sunday Live Talk Show has been brought to you by Brenda Reiss, BrendaReissCoaching.com.